The legacy of any city that we can all freely enjoy is its public space. When you fold away all the corporate, privatized portions of the city that have been used and abused of time and time again, you are left with the public space, the forum wherein community ties may be born and strengthened. As a designer, educator, and researcher, I have always been fascinated by what makes a place tick. Now, a few years ago, I thought to myself, well, fundamentally, it's all about creating quality places. So I set out to understand the extent to which quality in an urban environment depended on other factors. Due to an increasing interest I had between space and planning, I started by looking at the planning process, understood in terms of the forces that shape places. And I felt it was an important component of this puzzle. Indeed, it was, and I became engrossed in the mechanics and politics of planning in my quest to understand why some projects had more design quality than others. Now, while researching this, I realized that most people looked at quality environments in a very what you see is what you get kind of way. We could call this a product-centered approach to quality, a concern with the physical manifestation of quality, or conversely, the absence of it. It also started becoming very apparent to me that different professionals had very different ideas of what quality was. But what was common about that concern was this concern with having lively spaces that were alive. Nothing apparently wrong, I thought, with this. But then I started to see how city strategies were actually increasingly focused on bringing the city alive, especially those strategies that were directed at the rehabilitation of derelict and disused area. Branded along with the usual suspects, big words like quality of life, sustainability, regeneration, thrown into this melting pot in an almost formulaic manner with the expectation that quality spaces would result therefrom. And sometimes it worked, but sometimes it did not. And I was interested and curious to try and understand why. And I found a lot of answers. Short-term visions, lack of foresight, lack of a sustainable strategy, the economic crisis, political instability. But maybe, I thought, maybe there was something fundamentally wrong in the original approach to envisage these spaces, which would have otherwise transcended these phenomena. Maybe they were not addressing the real quality. But what did that really mean? I eventually came to realize that these strategies were not necessarily making the cities livable. Great, I thought to myself, I finally nailed this, and I was determined to share this realization with other people, until I became aware of the fact that for many, this was a non-issue. Life, I was told, is implicit in both alive and livable, so why should they mean different things? So I sought to understand what it is that we, as architects and urban designers, fundamentally do. So we define, we articulate, and we change spaces. And why? Well, to make a positive contribution to people's lives. We are constantly in space, indoor or outdoor. This very same space has been thought out by someone at some point in time, indeed by different people at different points in time. And even if we take this for granted, we are affected by space. Every design decision that we take, or that we fail to take, can affect someone's life. So as designers, we shape lives, we shape characters. We have great power in affecting people's moods, aspirations, sanity. But with great power, of course, comes immense responsibility. And the greatest responsibility that we have, I would argue, is towards livability. We have a responsibility towards creating meaningful places that really matter, that provide meaning to people's lives, that make people happy. Because, as Shakespeare once put it, What is the city but the people? A city is not simply a collection of spaces and buildings. And I have come to view our relationships with spaces in the same way that we relate with each other. Because when a person means something to you, then that person becomes someone special. Then that person truly matters. Then you can relate with that person. You feel a connection. You become increasingly aware of that person's character, needs, and fragility. There is a point when you know it's love, in spite of how trying that may be. You are ready to form a long-lasting relationship with that person. You feel a sense of responsibility towards that person. You are ready to care for that person. You become fully engaged in that person's life, and you will love, respect, and protect that person right until the end. When a space means something to you, then that space becomes a special place. Then that space truly matters. Then you can relate to that space. You feel a connection. You become increasingly aware of that place's character, needs, and fragility. There is a point when you know it's love. You are ready to form a long-lasting relationship with that place. You feel a sense of responsibility towards the well-being of that place. You are ready to care for that place. You become fully engaged in the lifetime of that place. And you will love, respect, and protect that place right until the end. In the places that matter, we become fully engaged with one another. This engagement is the basis of community formation, and communities are the building blocks of our cities. So creating a livable city is about investing in human capital. Now, throughout the past years, I have found that the places that really work, the ones that have an innate quality that goes beyond the apparent physical quality, are those that have strong community ties. Invariably, when people talk to me about their experiences with urban spaces, they talk to me with most vigor about their relationships with other people in those spaces, the experiences that they share with one another. To them, life is more fulfilling when they feel part of a community. And this reminds me so much of Chris McCandless's parting phrase in the book and later movie, Into the Wild, that happiness is only real when shared. A simple phrase with deep-rooted implications as to how we should view quality spaces and, indeed, life. And this is because the joys of being are not temporary. They are not just fleeting moments. More often than not, real happiness is long-lasting. It is not lust, but love. But we cannot assume that a community happens by default. I have realized that for a community to form, individuals must first feel that they constitute an important part of their neighborhood. They need to be proud of their buildings and their streets and feel that they also own, in a very equal and communal manner, the urban spaces. And this only happens when they are enabled and empowered to partake in processes that shape places. They become the shapers of their own spaces. And this does not necessarily happen in many city strategies, which might be more focused at injecting new catalysts into a neighborhood or a district. Many would indeed refer to this as regeneration, a big word which is laden with significant implications, but which I find is often used very loosely when describing or promoting this new urban transformation. And we see this happening all around us, from new, flashy, privatized waterfronts to sanitized, clinically designed inner city spaces, in the spirit of getting some life into the city. But more often than not, this very same product becomes much more important than the process, which furthermore tends to be very top-down, imposed. And what we are told is regeneration is really speculation. the market takes over and enclaves are created, polarizing rather than tying our communities. If instead we focus on developing our urban environments with the local communities, then we stand a much greater chance of improving individuals' quality of and outlook towards life. Then we can really introduce our fancy building and our urban catalysts, and probably citizens will be more receptive towards them because they have contributed towards their fruition. Focusing solely on making the city alive risks becoming a short-sighted, short-term venture that is programmed solely to satisfy the select few, often the speculators, without thinking of the long-term implications to our existing and future communities. And this has increasingly become one of my biggest challenges with clients, authorities, and sometimes even my students. It is particularly a challenge when dealing with those stakeholders who are more interested in the short term, especially if they stand to gain from it. But if we really understand this challenge, then we must first be open to change. And to me, this realization has increasingly meant that while I remain fully interested and committed in the design product, being a producer of the built and unbuilt forms, I have become more interested in the process of shaping that product. I therefore now do not think of myself as being just a designer, but also an enabler or a facilitator within the process, empowering people to take decisions about their homes, about their spaces, about their cities, to really add value to their quality of lives. I think that the creation of livable cities represents one of the biggest challenges that we are and shall be facing throughout this century. As designers, we need to be aware of our responsibility towards society. As citizens, we need to challenge our conventional structures, including those governance models that might have worked previously. We all have a stake in making this happen. Thank you.